All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to folks around the world. Um, Welcome, Pete. Thanks for showing up every week as we continue to explore um, all these pieces of getting to know our own selves, our inner landscapes, ways that we as practitioners can work with clients, and we as our own self practitioners working on ways to relax, listen in, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to parts that you didn't even know existed. And there's today we decided to talk about negotiating with our parts. And there's an incredible system that, forget the doctor's name. Do you know the name of the guy who did internal family systems?
I forget his name now.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll have to just
yeah.
put it in the notes later, but you can look it up. And this amazing man, he realized that we have so many parts within ourselves that want to be listened to, that are dictating aspects of our lives that like we didn't even know. And I know for me, before I learned about internal family systems, I was under the impression that we are one person. And if we're fragmented, then we're mentally unstable, schizophrenic, multiple personalities. And, with this work, there's just this realization that there are so many parts of ourselves because we've had so many lives within this life. And it seems that there's certain parts that will get stuck or frozen when there's a trauma or a situation. And so it's actually quite an incredible experience and journey to start to pay attention to these certain parts, these internal family systems, or frozen memories or traumas, and or however else you might want to describe them. So I just thought today, talking about negotiating with our parts would be good. Especially, I had a negotiation yesterday with a part, and it was fascinating. And had I not had that, those tools to do it and to do it that way, I don't know where it would have gone. So it was really cool to have that set of tools. So Pete has put together something to talk more about negotiating with our parts. So I will hand it over to you.
Yeah. So parts is a big part of our life. Um, in different communities, they call it something different. Um, Growing up, we may have heard of coping mechanisms. That's just a part of our our inner self coming out. Um, Other people call it sub personalities. We call it inner child, inner parts, stuff like that. I want to understand when we hear all of those, we're talking really about the same thing. Just different healing modalities and different communities say different things. But one of my favorite books that I ever read, and it's not even a super long book, about parts working and negotiating, is Your Many Faces by Virginia Satir. Um, she really brings in this concept that we are made of multiple faces, right? And even when she wrote the book, it wasn't that new of a concept. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later on where else our inner parts are seen externally. Um, but essentially, we have different aspects to our personality, you know? Um, and so when we look at these different things, right, I want you to take the time today just to really to look at yourself through a new lens, right? To understand and look at parts in your life where your different faces came out. You know. So when we think about, well, how do we get these faces? Are we born with them? Do we pick them up along the way in our journey? Are they given to us? Right? Yes, to all of them. Now, really in Satir's book, it really talks about how we learn them early on in our life. And then they carry us through how we react to external things as we grow up. So it could be seeking for approval, or being a people pleaser, or even being aggressive to the point where people are like, whoa, like I don't even want to be around you, right? It's ideally these different faces come out as a method to navigate our emotional landscape that we're experiencing with the event. It's why something may happen one way and we react, calm, cool, collected. Something happens similar, but a little bit different, and we react completely different, right? We get angry, we get loud. And it's like, well, why? And it's because one, our emotional landscape is very complex, you know. And so what our mind does is it begins to blend together different faces at different times, right? And so if we're a child and we're frequently faced with criticism, right, we may begin to develop an inner critic, a part that echoes all those external voices. But after a while, it's not someone else's voice, it becomes our voice. And so we got to begin to think about that of like, if you're very critical of yourself, take time to go, where did this come from? Was I born with this inner critic? Like, was I 3 days old going, here I am needing another bottle, right? Or did it come later on in life where we were like, oh man, like I was judged so much for being a good kid, but made it to feel like I wasn't enough, So just as time goes on, when these feeling comes out, think about, wow, like when did I really first feel this? Because these inner faces, these inner critics, right? Or parts, I should say, not really critics, they're not all critics. They play a role in our behavior and our beliefs. So a way to look at that is if I'm, let's say, a peacemaker, right? I want everyone just to be like, hey guys, let's just all just get along. I may emerge that interface in a way that just avoids conflict altogether. Right? If, let's say, I'm a perfectionist and things have to be perfect, I may work till I am just dead. Right? I won't take breaks. I'm like, I just got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. Right? That's just another face coming through. If you think about it, both these things are trying to protect us, but by protecting us, they also limit us. So if we think about the peacemaker, he's trying to protect us going, whoa, 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 I don't want to get into an argument because arguments make me feel pain. So it goes, oh, let me avoid it, right? If we're a perfectionist, we go, well, I need to feel good enough, right? Which is a very good feeling. But being perfect is an impossible thing to strive for, right? And so it also limits us on our ability to act, on to face and do new things because we go, well, we got to be perfect versus just letting us do it. And so when we think about maybe even that inner critic, right? Maybe that inner critic tells us, oh, we can't do that. We can't take this risk. We can't go for that new project because what if we fail? But then at the same time, I've learned over the years, every face has an equal opposite face. So like if I think of my inner critic who might prevent me from taking risks and fear of failure, I also have my inner child that's full of wonder, full of curiosity, who likes taking those risks, And so when we think about that dynamic relationship between those two opposites, do they communicate with each other? On some levels they do, but when we think about how, let's say, that inner critic takes over, he's kind of like the bully and he beats down that inner child going, I'm in charge, versus that conversation, right? And that's the role In Your Many Faces really talks about. And the way she does it in the book is she has these doors on stage and you're in the audience and each door has a name above it and they'll come out, right? She's giving them the opportunity to come out to talk to you. right? To talk to the audience, right? And then she'll have another emotion come out. And it could be love and hate, right? And they'll talk to each other. What do they love and hate? And what is love hate and what is hate love, right? If you think of the whole yin and yang, with every good there's a little bit of bad, and with every bad there's always a little bit of good. There's always those common things in between them. And so if we think of a pleaser, the opposite might be the blamer, right? So the person who just avoids conflict at all, then you get the blamer who just finds fault in everyone else and is very loud and out there. They need to have that conversation, right? But when we think about that conversation, we can't have it consciously. We need to begin to go, wow, we need to go inside to our unconscious or subconscious mind. And that's where, when we think about these faces, how they can begin to change how we see ourselves in the world around us. They change how we react. They change our decisions, how we even communicate, how we look at ourselves and the world around us. And so this is like one of my favorite stories. So back in 1984 for the Olympics, there was a psychologist and sports therapist who worked with, unfortunately, not the U.S. team. He worked with the Russians. And if you think of that rivalry we had back in 1984, this gave him such a competitive edge because he would work with, let's say, the wrestlers, right? And he would be like, hey, guys, like, you are the nicest person in the world, right? You're kind, you're caring, you're loving, you give to your family, you give back to your country. Like, you're an amazing person. But when you step out in that circle, that's not who you are anymore. Show me that face that's aggressive, that's strong, that's determined, that has no giving whatsoever. And before, like, they went to the Olympics, that's all he did to work with them. He didn't work on the technical skills. He worked on, when you go out here, you are a different person. You put on that new face of that other part that's already inside of you. And so he had a book, it's called Red Gold. And he talked about how a lot of people struggled with that because they not always, a lot of people viewed it as like, well, that's not who I am, right? I'm not, a mean person. I'm not an overly aggressive, overly dominant person. I'm really calm and quiet and introverted. And he goes, but it's just a face, right? Just like how you probably have different pairs of pants, different pairs of shirts, different hats, different jackets, right? You have different parts of you that you get to express at certain times. Because yes, you wouldn't bring an umbrella when it's a sunny day outside because it's not needed. But at the same time, if it was raining outside, you would bring out that umbrella because it keeps you safe, right? It keeps you dry. And he would do it with the runners. But then the more I looked into it in that time, they taught it at such a young age, right? They started working with people who were 6 or 7 going, who do you want to be today? And then those people would turn into the politicians, the police officers, the doctors, right? It just changed how people view themselves. And you see it nowadays, right? So now we're talking 30 years later, almost 40 years later. These people who have learned to master their inner faces can go out somewhere and put on that front, right? That's the external part of it. But understand they had to master the internal part for that to work. Because if we're not communicating, if we're not connecting and working with these parts inside, where, let's say, it's the aggressive side of us, right? There's a time where we all need to be aggressive, right? If someone pushed me down, I need to be aggressive to stand my ground. But let's say I'm afraid of my aggressive face because I don't think I can control it. Well, now he's being shunned when he shouldn't be shunned because he just doesn't know when's the right time and when's the wrong time. He needs to have those communications with my calm side, right? I always think of like an executive board meeting, right? They need to come together. They need to sit down. They need to go, hey, if someone spits in your face, it's okay to come out, right? But if I'm in traffic, that's not a good time to come out. Like I can stay then. You're not needed. And they get to become partners to communicate versus just being out of control. You know, it's one with the kids nowadays, the movie Inside Out. Like I love that movie just for the fact that on the inside you have anger, disgust, joy, sadness, and I think one other one. Um, you know, and that's really how like we. It's not just those five. We have hundreds and thousands. But in the movie, they really learn to work together, right? They learn that you don't have to be happy all the time. Sometimes sadness can come forward. Sometimes anger comes forward. Sometimes disgust needs to come out, or envy, or you know, it's okay. But do they know when it's time to go back, right? When it's time to give up the reins to have someone take over. And that's what really comes through on the integration side of things. Is these people, they learn that when, let's say I step on stage, I get to be out there. I get to be boastful. When I'm off stage, that part goes away. They tag in their partner, calm comes back, you know? And so if I think of Your Many Faces, she really talked about the therapeutic approach to this, right? By fostering our self-worth, by improving the communications for all parts. All parts are good parts. Never treat a part as if it's bad. They are all good. And when we begin to recognize and understand just the many faces we have, we integrate them. So we become a more cohesive self-image, right? We become that person who gets to now be in control everything. And when we, you know, integrate them, when we combine them and we get more control, that mirrors how we are on the outside, how we make choices, how we interact with the world. And there's so many different ways. So you talked about the internal family systems. There's hypnosis. Really, any way to access the unconscious or subconscious part of our mind is the key so they can communicate. Because if we use the conscious mind, that is our judgmental part. They're already being judged. They need the non-judgmental part, which is our emotional unconscious mind, so they can communicate and understand each other more fully. So that's what I had for our inner parts.
Wow, that's so great. There's so much great information within there. So I hope that we got those kind of, my intention is to, when I put those banners up, that's kind of the spot that a viewer can go back and look at, so as we have like a full thread of speaking, those banners are just like little timestamps where you can look back and go, okay, like what is even the concept that he's talking about? Okay, the concept of faces, and then, just like the origin of our faces, and then the roles and behavior in communication, and then the connection to the subconscious and the integration. And by like looking at those banners, like when you're listening again or what have you, these are like some questions that you can also ask yourself, like, what is a face within me? Like, what are those concepts? How do I feel and relate to it? Like, thinking about the origin of your faces, like, and your parts, where may they have developed? I mean, even just looking at these banners and then turning them around to ask some questions for you might be some nice like doorways and portals in to start to gather some information, especially if it's like brand new for you. So I just wanted to point that out. We try to do a small visualization for each session here. So Pete, do you have a couple minute visualization for people to sink in, especially for starting to meet apart?
Yeah, right. And this is one where, in general, I would say when we work with our inner parts, always go with someone you trust, because this is not an area where we get to go, oh, let me play around with, right? this is very much one of the deepest areas to work with an individual. With that, I will say what we're going to work with today isn't going to be any hard emotions. We're going to just pick one emotion, and it's probably going to be something simple as happiness, right? The happiness emotion, just so you can get, I'd say, used to meeting a nice, friendly one to listen and just kind of hear what pops up when it comes to happiness. So, with that being said, everyone get nice and comfy that's watching. Take a nice deep breath in. And then when you exhale, just close your eyes. Because it's easier to go inside with your eyes closed. As you begin to remove all the distractions going on around you. And as you go inside, maybe you begin to feel just a rise and fall of every breath. See, this is the introduction to just being aware of parts of you that are always active. Because maybe as you feel your breathing, you can feel your heart beating. Maybe you feel your feet firmly against the ground. You feel the air, the texture, the temperature, all around you. And it just helps you to go inside. See, inside your mind where all experiences, memories are stored. Deep inside, that's right, your unconscious mind. See, unconscious mind is there from the very beginning. And maybe get to imagine right in front of you, it's just a curtain. And behind the curtain, there's someone special. Someone that brings a smile to your face. And this someone is going just to represent happiness. The feeling just like the warmth of the sunshine on a relaxing day. See, as that curtain opens, just like I always imagine like a talk show when they announce their guest and they come out from behind the curtain, arms open, and there they are. Happiness and how your mind sees them. See, they get to come right on over and they get to talk to you. They get to teach you all those times in your life where he was there and maybe you didn't notice him. How you don't always notice the rise and fall of every breath. But he was there because he's part of you, part of your many faces. See, all you need to do is talk to him. Ask him, oh man, what was that time? Maybe when I was younger and we had that day and I just laughed. It was just the most amazing day ever. And he's like, oh, you mean this time? Maybe you ask him. Another question, like, do you remember when this happened? Maybe it's when you saw someone, like a family member, after a long break in between. And they opened the door and you saw their faces and you were probably just running up to them to give them that hug and excitement and happiness. And I was there too. Now he gets to feel more comfortable. He goes, let me tell you another time when I was there that maybe you didn't notice before. And all I want you to do is to take all the time you need to listen to him now for that experience. So you can let that experience bring you and carry you through the rest of today. Just to feel happy. Knowing you're there with you for the rest of today. Then you get to decide if he comes with you tomorrow and the next day. For you are them and they are you. Working together as a team. And once they have shared that experience, and it makes you smile and feel good, and that warm feeling in your body, you get to come on back, eyes opening up, but take all the time you need to experience that now.
Nice. That's fun. I think too that you brought up a really good point, which is, you know, you don't have to go to the deepest parts that are hurtful and painful, especially if it's new to you, or, you don't have someone guiding you, and to make sure you really have someone that you trust, but that you can really do these investigations, these connections, these like learnings with just a really good feeling, happiness, joy, achievement, um, laughter. Yeah, like there's so many of these elements that we can really play with that are safe. I mean, for the most part, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's always caveats to all things, but for the most part, we can really touch into that. And it seems just like nourishing on so many levels to actually touch back into my strength, my courage, my happiness, joy, achievement, like I said, and can you think of a few other ones just like as positives to remember?
Yeah, calmness,
Mm,
focus,
mm,
peace, right?
mm,
Love, right? Those are all ones that we probably have so many experiences of them,
mm.
but they're also the quieter ones,
They
right?
are the quieter ones. It's very interesting, but in actual truth, aren't they stronger?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it takes strength to make a good decision. It's pretty easy to make a bad one.
Hmm.
So, to really tap in to those greater, quieter yet stronger um, emotions and characteristics, memories. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I'm gonna just put that on as this kind of the banner for the end. And do you have any last thoughts for the day along this?
Yeah, I'd say begin to recognize that every part of you is a good part. They just may need more clarity and communication on what makes them good.
I like that. I'm just I'm trying to man. Okay, well, I failed at the banner thing at the moment, but that's all right for now. Um,
Um,
well, great. Thank you as always. Anyone who has questions or comments, definitely always reach out to us on any of the social media platforms. I'd like to say that I'm finding more and more that um, the parts, the faces, the memories, all the many, many names that it has, that it's just been really incredible for me to tap in to it and have tools to navigate, have tools to um, play games. It's like uh it's like playing like a really big board game with a bunch of people, but you don't need anyone but yourself. It's like way more complex than solitaire, it when you get to just start to realize, like, you get to meet new players, those players can switch and change up, and just what it can bring to the surface. So
yeah.
um I have a feeling that we might be talking more and more about parts, in the sense that um, I feel like it's really, there's nothing more internal than your own parts. All these other kind of work and stuff that we can do, even though it's all like integrated and connected. Um, some of them could be considered a bit outside or external from yourself in some ways, and your parts are just part of you and making you. And so I'm just really kind of like flourishing in the aspect of its potency, I guess.
Yep.
So yeah. Well, thank you as always for saying yes, Pete.
Yes.
And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in, and definitely reach out with any questions and comments. And I'll have to say too, just I'll say publicly that um, it's been really amazing having people reach out to me privately, telling me that they're listening or that it's been helpful to them. And even people tuning in just like right at the right moment, allowing them to just like sit and breathe and meditate. So that was really encouraging, and I really appreciate those messages. And we'll continue doing these live and doing these little meditations and visualizations, and then you can always just go back to it. you know it's hard to know in the timestamp exactly where it is. And then you can work with us individually if you want, or we can provide some resources, because there's just so much free resources out there that are great, intermediary kind of things, before you maybe work with someone or learn how to do it with yourself. So
Yep.
with that, have a great week, and thank you again. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.